America is often remembered for its victories, its inventions, and its promise of freedom. But like any great nation, there are chapters in its history that were quietly erased, not because they were small or insignificant, but because they were too disturbing to remember. This is the story of one such disaster. In the early 20th century, America was in a frantic race toward industrial power. It was an age of steel and steam, of ambition and invention. Factories were expanding at an incredible rate, cities were growing taller by the day, and speed mattered more than safety. Progress was the goal, no more matter the cost. In one small, unassuming American town, a massive industrial facility was built. It was a marvel of modern engineering, a symbol of the nation's unstoppable momentum. This structure towered over the working-class neighborhoods nearby, a constant reminder of the industry that fed their families. Officials, eager to project confidence, assured everyone it was safe. They held town meetings, published articles, and told the people there was nothing to worry about. But there was. Inside the facility, a different story was unfolding. The warning signs were everywhere, visible to anyone who dared to look. Workers, the men on the ground, reported strange, unsettling vibrations that seemed to hum through the very bones of the structure. Engineers, the ones who understood the blueprints, noticed cracks forming in critical supports, small at first, but growing like veins of dread. Concerned employees wrote letters to their superiors. Alarmed managers held urgent meetings behind closed doors. They pointed to the data, to the visible evidence of decay. They argued that disaster wasn't just possible, it was becoming inevitable. And then, silence. No more shutdown was ordered. No more evacuation plan was put in place. No more public warning was ever issued. Why? Because shutting it down, even for a day, would cost money. It would interrupt production schedules and impact profits. In the cold calculus of industry, human lives were weighed against dollars and cents, and the dollars won. The decision was made to push forward, to ignore the warnings, and to hope for the best. Then, on a quiet, ordinary morning, it happened. It was a day like any other. Families were gathered around their kitchen tables, eating breakfast. Children were putting on their coats, getting ready for school. The town was just waking up, completely unaware that it was living its final moments of peace. A sound, louder than thunder, ripped through the air. It was a deafening, tearing noise that shattered windows miles away. The structure, the pride of the town, had failed. It didn't just crumble, it exploded outwards with unimaginable force. In a matter of seconds, entire streets were swallowed whole. Buildings that had stood for generations collapsed like they were made of paper. The ground buckled and split, and the people who had been walking to work or looking out their windows simply disappeared, without even a chance to run, without a moment to understand what was happening. The wave of destruction moved faster than the human mind could process. When the dust began to settle, a horrifying silence fell over the town, punctuated by the cries of the wounded. Rescue workers arrived, but they were unprepared for the sheer scale of the devastation. They were met with a scene from a nightmare. Bodies were trapped under tons of twisted steel and rubble. Homes that had been filled with life just minutes before were now crushed flat, reduced to splintered wood and broken dreams. Survivors were screaming for help from places no more one could reach, their voices muffled by the debris that had once been their homes. The rescuers did what they could, digging with their bare hands, driven by a desperate hope, but for so many, it was already too late. The official discount released to the public was low, suspiciously low. It was a number that felt sanitized, designed to minimize the scale of the tragedy. It was low because many of the victims were never officially counted. They were the invisible people of the era, immigrants who had come to America for a better life, factory workers whose names were just numbers on a payroll, entire families whose presence was never properly recorded in the city's official records. They lived in the shadow of the great industrial machine, and in this, they were erased from its history. The government moved quickly not to provide comfort or long-term aid, but to control the story. The narrative had to be managed. Newspapers were pressured by powerful interests to downplay the incident. Official reports were rewritten, with key details about the known structural flaws omitted. Photographs that captured the true horror of the scene mysteriously vanished from archives. The disaster was carefully rebranded. It was called a freak accident, an unforeseeable tragedy. No more one important was ever punished. There were no more trials for criminal negligence, No more corporate executives held accountable for ignoring the warnings. The inquiries that did happen were merely for show, concluding that no more single person was to blame. Within a few months, the site was cleared and rebuilt. New structures rose from the rubble, as if to physically bury the memory of what had happened. Life, on the surface, moved on. The town needed the jobs, and the nation needed the industry. History books, when they mentioned the event at all, gave it only a passing sentence, a footnote in the grand story of American progress. But the locals never forgot. For decades afterward, elderly residents would whisper about it. They spoke of the day the ground shook and the sky went dark. They remembered the screams that echoed through the ruins for days. And most of all, they remembered the bitter, lingering feeling that justice had never come. Their stories became a kind of oral history, passed down through generations, a ghost haunting the town's memory. Today, people walk past that very location every single day. They go to work, they shop, they live their lives on ground that holds a terrible secret. They have no more idea what lies just a few feet beneath their feet. A buried disaster, a buried truth. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, the darkest moments in history are not hidden by the fog of time, but by a conscious choice. A choice to forget, to ignore, and to prioritize profit over people. This town story is a testament to the voices that were silenced, and a warning that the past we don't know can still have power over us today. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into forgotten history.